Hey friends, welcome to this week's episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. The title of this episode is Overcoming Your Weight Loss Challenges. And I am so excited. We are speaking with Lisa Salisbury, who is a health and weight loss coach. Lisa, it is such an honor to have you on. I can't wait to dive into this topic today. But before we do, can you have the audience know a little bit more about you and how you kind of got into this field? I'm really interested.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I got into this field probably like many others, starting with my own weight struggle. I started I started dieting when I was really young. It was first brought to my attention that I was overweight really when I was little, because it was a constant comment that I had not lost my baby fat. And so all through elementary school, like, it's okay, she just hasn't lost her baby fat. And so it was, very clear to me early on that there was something not quite right with my body. And I was told several times through high school and then again in college by primarily adult men that I should lose weight. I was told by my swim coach that my body fat was too high. He gave me vitamins to help with that. So just a lot of messages that my body was not right. And then I had 4 kids. So through the pregnancy and nursing of all of that, your weight does go up and down as it should, right? As it should. But the messages back then, my oldest is 24, my youngest is 15. And so the bounce back as fast as you can was really strong, that you shouldn't look like you had had a baby if it had been more than 6 weeks. Like, well, most people, they get their body back. And so those messages were so strong. And so again, I just was constantly trying to lose weight. And I remember being pregnant with my last and thinking, well, this is the last time I can be overweight. This is the last time it'll be okay for me to look heavy, right? Which is not the same as pregnancy. But this is like how distorted my thoughts had become. And so I tried diet after diet, and it wasn't until I had found coaching and the idea that just getting our brains on board and, not hating myself then, not talking to myself in a way that is so degrading in my brain, and not labeling my foods good and bad, and just working with my body, working with my brain. That's really where things came unlocked for me. And what's really crazy is that I have weighed this amount, my current weight, lots of times in my life and have thought it's not right. And now, because I'm at such peace with food and with my body, I'm like, this is totally great for me. I'm at a, regular sort of weight. I'm not at a, stage weight for a fitness competitor. That's not what I do. And I'm like, I love this. I love living and just loving my body and loving food.
Yeah. And it's so important. The way you talk to yourself matters. And I think that's really a key component. If you just keep saying you're not good enough, you're never going to feel good enough, and you're never going to be satisfied, and you're going to show up in the world that way. Our thoughts are totally, signals of energy, of things that we want to attract. And through your experience, or what are some challenges that you see that keep you stuck or people stuck in their current eating habits?
Yeah, I think I alluded just to this at the end there. I think one of the biggest things is labeling foods. So when we label foods, just generally speaking, good or bad, healthy or not healthy, we inadvertently label ourselves. So if we've eaten bad foods, and I'm going to put that in air quotes, right? We've eaten bad foods, then we're bad. So you've heard someone say this, oh, I was so bad today, I had 3 cookies. Or, well, I've been really good today, I had a salad for lunch, so I deserve this thing, right? Neither one are helpful. It doesn't help to label foods in that way. Foods have no moral value. They are energy to your body. And we want to eat things that work for our bodies 80 to 90% of the time. And we don't need to label it good or bad or healthy to know what works for us. And I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles for people to get over.
Also like in advertisement, let's say like Carl's Jr. or something, or ice cream bar, like I'm forgetting what it is, but they label it as like something, it's sexy to eat this, or it's bad to eat that. So it's kind of like, or fun to eat this. It's almost like subconsciously programming us, like how they tie food with emotion and
Totally.
how it's supposed to make you feel like when you're eating this or having that. So I think also you have to really separate yourself from some of the advertisement on how they promote food or restaurants and things like that, because it can be really overstimulating, especially if you have this narrative in your head of like labeling food, you're not good enough, can't eat that, can't do this. Oh, this was good. So I think, kind of limiting how much expose yourself to the world around you and, kind of silencing it out so that you can get on track with a good mental thought process about food.
Totally. And too, on those advertisements, they're always going to glorify overeating. They're going to tell, it's so fun. And we have these little hashtags, food coma, like overeating is actually not that fun. And when I really like push my clients on this, like, let's think about how your body feels when you've overeaten. They're like, yeah, it's not actually great. And so I always like to remind them more of this item, more of this food is not going to actually increase the experience of it. Your brain is like, let's have some more, let's have some more. It tastes so good. But you end up decreasing your overall experience by overeating that item.
Yeah. And then just feeling like you're in a food coma, miserable. Like, who wants to feel like that? So what are some actionable tools to manage your brain when you're thinking about your body and about food?
So some of the things that I work with my clients on is thinking about over desire and over hunger. So one of the ways that we think about the way our physical hunger occurs is it comes and goes in waves, and it's really driven by our hunger hormones, insulin, leptin, and ghrelin. And if we're feeling like our hunger is coming in too frequent of waves, if we're having too many peaks throughout the day, and let me just clarify that we should probably be eating somewhere between every 3.5 to 4.5 hours. So it's much longer than you typically have been taught in the past with diets. We really want to give ourselves time to digest and get that food cleared out before we're putting new food on top. So my clients actually don't snack. We eat a meal and then we wait until there's physical hunger happening. So typically that's going to be 3.5 to 4, even sometimes 5 hours. And so if you're having hunger happening more often than that, and you're like, I'm hungry all the time, it could be a sign that your hunger hormones are out of whack. And mostly that's driven by insulin. And so in order to decrease that constant insulin response, there's a couple things that we can do. Number one, we can eat fewer carbohydrates. And let me just repeat, fewer, not none, not zero. We want to still really emphasize fruit, vegetables, potatoes, whole grains, all of that kind of thing. We're talking about processed sugar and flour. So we just want to de-emphasize those kinds of things. And then the second thing we do is eat less often and in smaller quantities. And so that's what I'm talking about, waiting for hunger. And so we wait until we have true physical hunger, not just that first signal or that first idea, but really wait until you're ready to eat an entire meal and then sit down and eat that meal until you are just to enough. And then stop eating and wait again. This is going to really help reset those hunger hormones. And so even though the hormones are something kind of abstract, it doesn't feel like a concrete tool, like, oh, I don't really know what to do about insulin or ghrelin or what are those words. But the actionable things there are really waiting for hunger and for physical hunger. And then just, if you can, a few bites less of your processed carbohydrates. It's surprising how much difference that's going to make. And so just thinking about emphasizing your vegetables, protein, fiber, fat, and don't leave out fruit for sure. Tons of good fiber in fruit. And just de-emphasizing the things that are going to have processed sugars and a lot of processed flours. And then the second part is over desire. So that's kind of over hunger, when we're getting these hunger signals that are kind of like, why am I hungry again? Over desire is just the constant thought of, I need that. I deserve that. It's been a long day. And that creates desire in your brain. And so we want to allow that desire to be present without reacting to it, which is like a whole skill that you want to learn. It's the idea of allowing a craving to be in your body and being like, oh, here I am, being a woman that wants a cookie again, like so curious that, get into curiosity, like, why am I wanting this? What's going on? What do I think is happening? And really ask yourself, like, oh, why is this coming up for me again? And allowing it to be present without being like, you're never going to lose weight if you just constantly keep wanting cookies. You're never going to be successful at this. It's too hard, or just grit and bear it and use willpower. All of that is just resisting and pushing that craving down. It's going to come right back up. So we need to let it be present in the body and process it, and then let it dissipate. And that is how we're going to get over that constant over desire. And as we do those two things in conjunction, like reducing the insulin by managing that, and then allowing cravings to be present, you're going to find that going that 3.5 to 4.5 hours in between meals is like easy. And sometimes you're like, I'm not even hungry yet, and it's dinner time, and it's so easy to go from between lunch and dinner because you're properly fueling and managing the cravings that are coming.
Yeah, it's totally working on that self-control, which is hard to do sometimes. I get those cravings and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, just, you don't go to it. Don't go to the graham crackers and the chocolate, and it's like so hard to like, okay, you don't need it. Let's just focus your energy. Let's make like an almond butter shake instead. Maybe that'll satisfy the craving that I'm looking for. So, I'm also really curious. There's this new trend going on, and I feel like so many celebrities are doing it. There's like getting a handful of people that I know doing it. What are your thoughts on like this whole Ozempic thing?
Mm-hmm.
Getting the shot once a week. And I think it is for people who are diabetics, but now they are using it, for a weight loss supplement. Not that you're a doctor, but I just curious, since you are in the field of weight loss, what are your thoughts on this? And do you think it's a good thing for people to be doing, or they should just stick to normal, like self-discipline mindset? You can do it without like a insulin type of drug.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, like you said, not a doctor, but my feeling on it is it's not for vanity weight loss. And what I mean by that is if you've got 5, 10, 20 pounds to lose, you're talking about just the shape of your body. You want it to be different. If you have the disease of obesity, which can be diagnosed, then that's who it's appropriate for. It's appropriate for someone who has the constant noise of hunger. So it's past this over hunger, over desire that can be managed with regular diet and mental interventions. You have, I don't have this, and so I am not able to speak to exactly how it feels. But from what I understand, it's not just a constant hunger, but it's a constant overwhelming thoughts of food that drive the eating. And that is actually what Ozempic helps with. It's not so much a metabolic drug as it is it is solving the mental problem of the disease of obesity. So if that is the case for you, then absolutely do that in conjunction with working with, a health coach like me, who can help you also dial in what's happening with your meals and, doing some of the coaching work that happens with the brain along with that drug. If you are like, I just need to lose my last 10 pounds, no, it's not for you.
Mhm.
So it like many drugs can be used off label in in a not great way, but it works. And so people still do it because they're like, well, I don't feel hungry. And so it's just so convenient. It's so much easier. You have not learned then to process your cravings. And this is why people go off of it and they gain the weight right back, because it's like doing a crash diet that you haven't learned anything.
Mhm.
Those that have the true disease of obesity will actually be on this drug long-term, if not for life.
Yeah.
And so if you're not that person that needs it for that long amount of time, it's unlikely to be appropriate for you. But
Yeah.
again, consult your own doctor.
Yeah, no, perfect. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on it since you're in like the weight loss field and, if anyone is considering using it, really weigh your options out. And also, do you really need it? Like you said, is it a 5 to 10 pound thing you're trying to lose, or do you really have like the obesity diagnosis and need a little extra help for that? Well, Lisa, I have 4 questions I ask all my guests, and I can't wait to know what your answers are. So my first question to you is, who and what inspires you?
So there's actually a couple of weight loss coaches out in the world that inspire me. And I find some of their work just as a life coach, I find them inspiring. But for the most part, in my personal life, I'm inspired by my religious leaders. And so I'm a Christian. And so I find inspiration there. And with a lot of, so it's kind of varied as far as like the broad range of leaders I follow, but there's a couple women in particular. I don't know if you want like specific names, but
Just whatever yeah, usually the first thing that comes to your mind is the best answer. So if you have like a broad spectrum of people that you like, then that's great.
yeah.
So what is something you wished you knew when you were younger?
So I definitely wish I knew that my body was good. I wish I knew that no matter what, my body, nothing had gone wrong with my body, and that it was actually functioning exactly as it should. It was storing fat for later. It was gaining weight to protect my babies. And it was keeping weight on for the same reason during nursing, and that nothing has gone wrong. And I think that's probably my biggest thing with when I was younger.
No, that's beautiful. I love that. And I think everyone needs to be reminded your body is beautiful no matter what stage it's in. It's miraculous and it does things for you during your time of need, like pregnancy, gaining weight, breastfeeding, and, your body's always going to be fluctuating. You're going to have like your good months, you're going to feel like you have your bad months, but we need to embrace our bodies and love our bodies, and then we'll see ourselves in a different light. So I think that's really important to understand. There's nothing wrong with you. You're built exactly the way you're supposed to be. And then my third question is, what's the essential part of your daily routine?
I think my most essential part is going to bed on time. I'm a huge advocate of sleep, and not just with how it affects our weight loss, because it definitely does, and your abilities to make decisions the next day, as well as how it affects those hunger hormones I mentioned. But there's countless reasons. And so I noticed there was like a reel on Instagram that's like, oh, I'd do anything to get 8 hours of sleep. And then the other guy is like, would you go to bed 8 hours before you have to wake up? And he's like, oh no, I can't do that. That's what I do. Like,
Yeah,
I'm like, what time do I have to wake up? And so I go to bed on time. And I think that is really the key to my schedule.
perfect. And then my last question is the best advice you've ever received.
I had an answer for this, and now I've just, oh yes, I do remember now. I was like, so when my dad was alive, he was like a natural life coach. He didn't actually need to ever work on his thoughts like a lot of us do, because he just said, there's the option to be happy, and so I am. And I just think he was, and probably I should have included him in one of my inspirations as well, but his ability to choose the good and choose the happiness, and just even, despite what he was going through, despite what his family was going through, he was a genuinely happy person. And I just think that is good advice to just say, if it's an option, it is an option for you. And so see how you can choose it.
I love that. That's a really great advice. Thanks, Dad, for that.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for coming on this week's episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. All of her links are down below in the show notes. Don't be shy. Go say hi. And thank you everyone for listening to this week's episode. And I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.